digging deeper and digging deeper, I realized that all these control systems that I had in place, like I said, they were just coping mechanisms for things that I was not dealing with. And the more I chipped away at letting go of these, the more I noticed that whatever I'm putting in my body, I'm putting it in because I love my body and I want to serve it and do the best for it. And now I have no idea how many calories I consume. I'm eating quite a lot, but I've noticed now my weight has just stabilized. It doesn't even matter what I do, it just ends up stabilizing. Welcome to the Fitness Genie podcast. You're back with Coach Laura, and today I want to talk about tracking and when calorie and macro tracking can serve you and when it can disserve you. And I thought the best way of doing this is actually just to walk through what I went through, my experience of tracking, how it all started, and when it benefited me, and then when it started becoming destructive. So back in my early 20s, before I got into bikini competing, I somehow started getting interested, once I got into weight training, into calorie and macro tracking, just literally reading stuff online. Someone really big in the industry, Lane Norton, I started learning off him as to how to track, what you can do in order to gain muscle, lose weight, and whatnot. And then I started doing it myself. I got the app on my phone, started tracking what I was eating, and to be honest, at the start it was just observational. I was just really intrigued to see how much I was eating, and according to my maintenance levels, whether I was overeating or undereating, just understanding what my food portions look like. And yeah, from there I started noticing that once I actually stuck to a certain amount, I think it was something around 2,000 calories a day, with a certain macro breakdown, I noticed that my body actually started changing. And I started getting much leaner. And from that, soon afterwards, when I started bikini competing, for that 1 year back in 2014, I manipulated my macros in order to reverse myself up to have a bigger budget, and then cut down in order to get leaner. So reversing your calories up allows you to basically put on more muscle mass and less fat than if you were to just jump your calories straight back up. So learning this and playing around with it whilst I was competing as well and coaching myself, it was a really interesting experiment. And if I'm honest, it really served me in the sense that I learnt portion sizes and what worked for me. I understood what 200 grams of chicken looked like when it was cooked and when it was raw, what a plate should really look like for a specific meal. Maybe I shouldn't use the word should, it's just what it looked like for myself at that time, as to what I was eating. The other great thing was when I was actually bikini competing, I'm saying that in a really weird way, not bikini competing, but competing in bikini competitions for that 1 year back in 2014. I would never have been able to do it by going on the old school chicken and broccoli bodybuilding diet. I was brought up with chocolate in my life, and at that time, there was no way that I was giving it up. So I made sure that I could manipulate my macros and my calories in order to still fit in lots of treats as I was getting into shape, basically. And it worked. It really did work. Coming up to the competitions, I would eat much cleaner, take all these inflammatory foods out of my diet, and then I was great for stage. So I managed to do that 4 times in that 1 year. Coaching myself, just tracking and learning and researching, understanding how my body worked on different amounts of food. In that time, it really served me because it was a learning curve for me to understand what certain foods could do to your body, or certain amounts of foods, how they could manipulate your body shape. And it was just fascinating, and I just stuck with it. But after my competitions, I was still in this mindset, even though I didn't want to compete anymore, that I still needed to track because I still needed to look this specific way. And I think at the time I was in denial, but it became a bit of a way to hold on to my control issues, which I never really noticed I had all my life, until it became more obvious to me later on, after I had been tracking for a few years. So before my competitions, before 2014, when I first started getting into tracking, it really served me, because I learned to understand what my food looked like on my plate, how it affected my body shape when it got digested. During my time of competing, it also served me because I was able to get the results that I wanted on a superficial level. Afterwards, it then started becoming destructive because I was unable to let go of that control. And I remember there were a few instances when I would track something wrong and panic and be in an absolute tiz about it, to the point of me crying because I'd eaten a whole tub of ice cream, which I thought was I could fit in my macros, but I actually got it wrong. And afterwards I found out that I'd gone over by like 500 calories, and I burst into tears. And it was more of this control issue that I was holding on to, that was a massive it was a massive, how can I say this? I really struggled when I couldn't control that, and when I got it wrong, and when I didn't have the opportunity to track because I was going out or something, or I was on holiday, and when I couldn't track, it would actually turn out in into binging episodes where I was like, free for all, I'm not tracking. So it was either one or the other. Either I was all in and tracking, or I was all out and going for it like it was treat day or something. And I just got to a really unhealthy relationship with food. And this went on for a few years. I looked really great, right? I was in shape. I was pretty lean. I managed to maintain my leanness for, a good, I'd say 5 years or something, tracking. And it just seemed totally normal to me. It just became second nature to whip out the scales, put my food on there. I even weighed my vegetables, which at that point, I should have been able to eyeball my food by then in order to understand my portion sizes. As time went on, and after a few health concerns and allergy issues, I started to realize that all of these things I was holding on to in terms of my training and my nutrition were all control mechanisms, with things that I was covering up to avoid certain things that I had to deal with in my life. And I remember experimenting with my nutrition in different ways, just trialing different things, especially when I was going through this period of like intense allergy reactions, which is another story. I decided, right, I'm going to delete this app and see what happens, and see if I can actually stop tracking and still be okay with my body. And it may change, but it's okay, because I can always pick it back up again and start again and start tracking again. And that's what I did. And guess what? My body didn't change that much. And although I panicked a bit, and some weeks I would start tracking again and then I delete the app, over time I managed to let go of that control. And that is when it served me to learn intuitive eating. Now, I was still very conscious of to what I was putting on my plate. I was actually still almost tracking in my head. And that was almost like a sense of denial that I really wasn't dealing with the issue of my control problems. So this, you can see where tracking has kind of not, oh, I guess in a sense, warped my brain to, rather than viewing my food as a way to fuel my body and serve my body, it was more of a superficial thing. It was more for me to worry about, more for me to control what I looked like, and yeah, to just have that superficial control over myself. Once I let go of the tracking over time, which actually took a few years, and stopped tracking in my head as well, and just ate according to what served my body, because I was forced into this because of health reasons. But I'm so thankful that that actually happened, because I dealt with the issue and was able to let go of those tracking control systems in me. And oh my gosh, was it a relief and such a weight off my shoulders when I actually stopped tracking all these things. I also had a Fitbit as well, which is, I guess, another story, but I did notice that I started getting addicted to tracking my steps and my calories on there too. So I do not track anything anymore. As you can see, I'm someone who's susceptible to having these kind of obsessive OCD controlling things. But then I needed to get to the root cause of that. And so digging deeper and digging deeper, I realized that all these control systems that I had in place, like I said, they were just coping mechanisms for things that I was not dealing with. And the more I chipped away at letting go of these, the more I noticed that, like, whatever I'm putting in my body, I'm putting it in because I love my body and I want to serve it and do the best for it. And now I have no idea how many calories I consume. I genuinely don't. I think some days I'm eating like, I must be eating about 3,000 calories. I'm eating quite a lot. But I've noticed that whatever I'm consuming, sometimes I treat myself, sometimes I don't fancy having so many treats. Other times, like, I'm really, really good with my diet, depending on like what the situation is. And now my weight has just stabilized. Doesn't even matter what I do, it just ends up stabilizing. I'm also not craving things and craving the these cheat days and these little binges and stuff, because I've taken that control away from it and let go. And I'm now coming at it again, like I always say, from a curious and explorative sense. And it's so, so, so much more rewarding. And I enjoy my food so much more as well. So right now for me, intuitive eating and stepping away from the scales and the trackers, as well as the tracker in my head, has done me wonders. However, it did serve me at a time. Back in my early 20s, when I had no idea what I was consuming and didn't understand what was going on with my food, me tracking actually helped me understand and learn. And I really think it holds an important place in people's lives, depending on where they are at in their own journey of understanding their bodies more. We have an abundance of food in society at the moment, and I can imagine anyone who has whatever willpower you might have, like, there's so much food available to us that actually understanding what you're putting in your bodies can be super beneficial for people to learn that you do need to have a sense of control. You can't just go nuts on things, because your body will be affected by it. So in that sense, when you have a tracking app, or you're looking at your nutrition in that more superficial sense, can be super, super useful. But it has a time and a place. If you're someone, or at a point in your life where control and restriction, that it's something that you hold on to and you can get affected by, and that there's issues that you need to deal with on the inside, then maybe tracking is not right for you at this time. If you're someone who feels like the abundance is something that you feel like needs to be reined in, that you you hold a lack of discipline, I guess, then maybe tracking is something for you to understand things better. For me, I had to let go of discipline. For others, it may be the opposite. Maybe there will be a time in my life where I will track again. I feel like I don't think there is another space for me to utilize that way of fueling my body. And you might find the same thing, that it switches from one point where you're thinking that it's right for you, and then another point in your life it no longer serves you. So I hope this was somewhat useful. I feel like I've rambled a little bit, but basically the gist of this podcast is that if you hear people say that something is good or something is bad, or you must do this, or you can't touch that, you can't do this, you can't do that, when people hold these restrictions in place just because of their own experiences, I don't think that's the best way to go about it. So you might meet coaches or people who've experienced the same as me. They've gone through periods of where it serves them and then it doesn't serve them anymore. And then they're on this train of everyone needs to learn how to intuitively eat. But that's not right for that individual. As you've seen from my story or heard from my story, it can serve you at one point in time and then disserve you at another point in time. So we need to be open and explorative about this. Allow people to learn from these amazing tools that we have in place, and then be able to remove them eventually and rely on yourself to know what you're consuming and putting in your body. So intentions is so important in this, and please don't feel obliged to listen to someone if they have an extremely stern view on something like this. You need to be honest with yourself as to whether you think that tracking is right for you at this point in time. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know if you want to hear more about this sort of topic. And yeah, I'll leave it there. See you guys.